Situate, and we have a wonderful cohort from both the general ed school counseling side and our special ed school psychologist side. So if everyone introduce themselves.
Yeah.
Hi. Do I turn around? Maybe come from a circle. Yeah, a circle. It's a small group. Yeah.
So why don't you start, Cassandra?
So I'm Cassandra McNamara, the school psychologist at Gates Intermediate.
I'm Angela Lang. I'm the school psychologist at Jenkins Elementary.
I'm Megan Schilling, and I'm the adjustment counselor at Gates.
And I'm Jen Lopes, the adjustment counselor at the high school.
Paulette Marino, the adjustment counselor at Wampatuck and Cushing.
And I'm Tammy Rundle. I'm the director of school counseling for Situate.
So in working with my PAT co-presidents, we plan out different evenings for each month, and this was one of the suggestions that we talked about, just sharing out what are the both general education and special education supports for students socially and emotionally. And so we have the whole gamut of supports that can be provided, and we want to talk about accessing those supports, etc. So that's where we're going to go from here. So our agenda, again, like I said, basic structure of counseling supports, programming, talk about the K-12 school counseling model, supports and programs, and special ed services. Now, I'm going to have someone else explain this chart because this was brought to my attention that this had been used in the past, and we kind of updated it to where we are now in Situate. So who would like to talk about this? Who sent this out? Okay, Cassandra?
So we have so many supports in the school. It's great. A lot of kids with different needs can get so many different supports. But even coming in the first year, I'm like, well, where do I fit? Where is my piece of the puzzle? And everyone has so much to offer. So we want to make sure and explain where everybody kind of fits and how. We also, as much as this is very boxy and everybody fits in their little box, there is overlap and it can be fluid. But individual counseling goes across all three domains. So the school counselors, the school adjustment counselor, and the school psychologist. Everybody does individual counseling. And as you go down, you can see that if a student has been diagnosed with a disability, but it's not really impacting their access to the curriculum or their education, and it's not really impacting their school, so it would mainly be like a touch base with the school counselor, kind of homeschool communication is really working then, and seeing if there are any supports that can be offered in schools. And then the third one down is any student who might have something more temporarily. They might have a bout of depression, or they might have, their parents are going through a divorce, something more temporary that they're going through, but then they're pulling out of it. We're going to try some intermediate steps first, but that can be all across the way, but generally it starts with general education and moves to school psychology, which is the special education, and Megan and Jen are kind of and Paulette are also the school adjustment counselor. So it kind of bumps up in services the more needs. So they would probably start with school counselor, and then moving to school adjustment, and then to me. And let's see what the
Can I jump in for 1 second too about the whole school counselor thing, because they used to be called guidance counselors, and there's been kind of a shift in models to talk about school counselors instead of guidance counselors. And so Jenkins has a school counselor in Nina Riley, and then but the other elementary schools don't have school counselors, and then Gates has Mrs. Mahoney and Mrs. Driscoll as school counselors, and they're also certified as adjustment counselors, but their role is a school counselor. And then at the high school level, every student is assigned a guidance counselor. So that column of school counselors refers to what is traditionally known as guidance counselors.
So for elementary schools, it's Jenkins.
Jenkins is the only,
Why is that?
It's just staffing.
Yeah, it's a staffing issue. There was a change in our in the way we in our structure a couple of years ago. There used to be guidance staff in every elementary school, and as those positions, those people retired, they replaced them with school psychologists, and the school psychologists had a dual role to be guidance and school psychology. But what we found was their jobs were really tailored for special ed, the testing, and the guidance piece wasn't really happening as much because of the testing involved with special ed and the timelines. So it was really hard for them to kind of manage as much as they would have liked to. So they we kind of had like a split, and as a result of the split, we only have one school counselor at the elementary level, and our adjustment counselors, Paulette Marino and Linda Nathan, split between two of the schools. There's definitely a disparity, and it's something that the district is aware of, and we're doing our best to kind of to work through that. If that makes any sense.
You explained it quite well.
So that kind of covers a lot of this chart too.
Yeah.
And I think that helps to clarify. And I think there's, the school adjustment counselors bring something to the table with really having the community connections and really being aware and understanding of different resources that parents and students can access outside of the school as well. So they bring that wraparound service, and that's kind of their expertise. And of course, they do all the other stuff too. And we lean on them, and that's where those boxes we overlap. And there might be a student who is in special education receiving school psych services where their depression is so strong that it is impacting their access to the curriculum or their ability to really show what they know. So that's when it becomes a special education issue. And so then it kind of bumps overneath. But if some of those students also have struggles at home and their parents need resources, and then we might share, or there's something else that the family is going through or experiencing that we'll both see a student in some cases.
Right, and then over the last couple of years, Tammy and I worked with almost everybody here on redefining job descriptions for school psychologists and school adjustment counselors. That was a big task that we undertook, and it's still something that we have to keep working on because we need to, as the roles change and the demands change, the curriculum for counseling at the elementary school and getting into classrooms, and the whole working with central office to make sure that we are all aware of what's going on and where the gaps are and where we need to work toward providing the staffing as best we can. But then there's that whole priority in the C plan and making sure that everything fits together. So it's a bigger discussion than just saying we don't have equity right now, but we are aware of it and we're trying to work toward equity. And with the school psychologist piece, most, 99%, it's through an IEP service. So it's not typically in one of the tiers that we'll talk about next. It's more of, that's beyond the tiers, and once the student qualifies for an IEP, it could be a service on an IEP. But the school adjustment counselors and the school counselors are general ed services that don't require specialized special ed services.
Okay. So I'm going to talk just a minute about the school counseling model. A few years ago, we adopted a model in Situate known as the NASS Model for school counseling, and it's a systematic approach to counseling where counselors go into the classroom to deliver curriculum around social and emotional needs, academic skill building, and also we do a lot of work at the high school level with respect to post-secondary planning. But primarily at the elementary school level, the curriculum that we're developing is primarily about emotional regulation and social and emotional well-being of students. So some of the curriculum lessons that are being taught at the elementary levels, the kindergarteners are learning about feelings and self-awareness. In the first grade this year, the school adjustment counselors and Anita Riley at Jenkins are implementing lessons on mindfulness. And they had a nice training today where they had a presenter come out and spend the whole day talking about how to teach mindfulness to children and how to develop a curriculum around that.
Because our school psychologists
were as well.
To bring into their practice with kids.
So in the second grade, they talk a lot about kindness and empathy. Third grade, they start talking about acceptance and diversity. In the fifth grade,
Is this weaning away from Michelle Garcia Winter's curriculum? Or is it in?
She's talking about the social
The
thinking.
social
Yes.
thinking curriculum?
It's different.
It's different,
It's
it's
different.
different, yeah,
Yeah.
it's different, it's
Nobody's
different.
weaning away from social
No.
thinking, that it's
No, no.
very much ensconced in
Okay.
Situate
Yes.
public schools and very much, used.
Okay.
Yeah,
When you said
absolutely.
curriculum, I'm confused, because I thought that was it, but.
No, it's different,
Okay.
it's different,
So that's more character ed.
character ed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
Okay.
she's talking about, and Michelle Garcia Winter's more social skills.
Okay.
Yeah. And we do a lot of work around anti-bullying. We have an anti-bullying policy, the Situate Public Schools. So we've implemented the open circle curriculum at the younger levels, and all of the counselors and psychologists were trained as student support personnel in helping the teachers implement those classroom lessons on character development and anti-bullying. At the middle school, we have our school counselors go into the classroom and teach lessons. So their lessons, and in fact, I'm going to have Megan talk a little bit more about this in a little bit. But the 7th grade, they talk a lot about stress and anxiety. In addition to transitioning to the middle school with study skills, they do a lot of work around career development. But in the 8th grade, last year, we implemented it's called the Break Free from Depression curriculum, and it's based from, is it Children's Hospital? It's a proven curriculum that really talks about, helps students recognize that depression is not a stigma, and to help students talk about it and get the help that they need, and to help recognize the warning signs of depression in others so they can get the help that the students need. I'm going to have Megan talk a little bit more about that, if you want to jump in.
Sure. So it is through Children's Hospital, and essentially the purpose behind it is to educate all students. A lot of students were transitioning to the high school, and I think a lot of symptoms of depression were being seen, and there was just a lot of questions of kind of how can we prepare students in middle school when really they're really at risk to develop depression. And so it's really focuses on that awareness. For students who maybe aren't experiencing that, it's really to educate them and to let them know that depression is just like it's a medical illness. It's like diabetes or, high blood pressure. And so it's really twofold, to help educate and then also help those students who might be experiencing those symptoms to really understand what they're going through and educate them on how to access support. So that's in the 8th grade. And Mrs. Mahoney teaches that class, and I support her in that as well.
And there is a parent component to that program.
Yes, there is, yeah.
So they've done a nice job inviting parents in. There's a really powerful video that the students watch that they show the parents as well, and they talk a lot about what their kids are learning in the classroom that day, just to give them some heads up. And they also know that they also notify the staff when this topic is coming out, just to kind of keep an eye on the students, because it is a sensitive topic for a lot of students.
And
So
Savannah
was-
is
yeah,
a
the-
big part of it as well.
And there's
to
been a
support.
teacher component,
Right.
like we did
Yes.
do a training for the staff before showing that to kids, because some of the staff was
Excellent.
wondering.
Excellent.
And as a culture, you have a lot of stigma, oh my gosh, are we teaching them things, or how does that affect kids? Are they going to come into my class, breaking down afterwards? So helping them to understand what the kids are experiencing, and that it is a positive experience, that we're hoping to educate them and get them help that they need, but to do it in a positive way, in a supportive way.
So at the high school level, the high school counselors are more geared for academic planning and post-secondary transition planning. We don't have a lot to offer in terms of social emotion programming as the school counseling, but there is a lot of group work and programs that Jen Lopes is responsible for. I'm going to have her talk a little bit about those, because she really is the social emotional guru. I don't want to go, that's not the guru, I want to say resource for our students at Situate High School. So do you want to talk a little bit about your groups?
So there are my role as the adjustment counselor at the high school is kind of to help support guidance and to help those students who their needs are kind of above and beyond what guidance can help them with sometimes, whether it's a situational thing or a family situation, mental health, drugs or alcohol, could be any number of things. And so there are lots of opportunities and resources that we offer to kids at the high school. The first of which is a support group for kids who have family members or close friends who might be struggling with addiction. It's called Kids of Promise. And Caron Treatment Centers is a drug and alcohol program that has trained our student assistance program, which I'll talk about in a minute, has trained us and comes in and delivers some services for students. So with parent permission, it's an 8-week group for kids to kind of learn about the fact that, drug and alcohol addiction is an addiction, it's a disease, it doesn't make mom or dad a bad person, it's, truly that this is an addiction, and how that plays out for them, and trying to think about their own healthy choices and decision making and those kinds of things. So that's one group that's available to kids. There's also another psychoeducational group that they run for kids thinking about their own decisions, whether it's around drugs or alcohol, goal setting, those kinds of things. So that's another 8-week group, again, with parental permission. We've done a stress group for kids, which is always interesting to me because it's hard to get them there because they're also overbooked and overwhelmed, that getting them to stay or have the time after school is really a challenge. So we're trying to be creative about doing that. But our schedule is a little different than Gates. I think, delivering services to kids in the high school is a little more complicated in terms of their, I won't even go into the logistics of the schedule, but at any rate, when we go into the classroom, it's usually I go into the health classroom and talk about depression or dating violence or, whatever other issues there may be. And then the other thing that I coordinate, which is again kind of a smaller population of students, if there's a program called the Student Assistance Program, which Karen has come in and trained a bunch of teachers, so it's this confidential group of teachers who are trained to help identify resources and help students who may have drug or alcohol issues. And again, the earlier we can identify that and hopefully get support, hopefully students will be, have better outcomes and not get further on down the continuum. So if a parent was concerned, if a teacher was concerned, if another peer was concerned about somebody else, they could come in and there's a whole process to kind of gather information and give feedback and, connect with services if necessary. So I think, that's kind of the roles of the group, and I think what we all do is offer confidential services to kids, and everybody's really good about confidentiality in schools. I think we really have to work hard to honor that. By virtue of our license, we have to honor that, and I always tell the kids the only exceptions to that are on issues of safety. If I'm worried, somebody's going to hurt themselves, hurt somebody else is being hurt, or there's bullying going on, because I work in a school, we've got to report that. We're mandated reporters, but so it gives the kids kind of a place to go and talk, and it amazes me how many of them come, whether it's on their own, with friends. Parents might refer school counselors. So, yeah.
I kind of jumped ahead a little bit.
Yeah,
Would you
sorry.
like to talk a little bit about some of the programming and groups that are run at the elementary school?
Sure. So we do lunch bunches and lunch groups, as you probably are all aware of. The lunch bunches, we call it lunch bunches for the younger kids, and it becomes like lunch group by 4th grade. And basically it's to provide a smaller setting for kids that might need social skill development, that they might be lacking a little bit in that area, and some pro-social behaviors, like if there's kids that are finding it really difficult to understand what's expected in school, we bring in some role models during lunch group, or we just can then do individual counseling with the same kids and talk about what we saw during lunch group. I use that a lot as a place for me to observe kids with other kids. And then it's a place that we can help develop and nurture friendships, because some kids are new to the system, and then some kids are basically a little bit shyer than others and have a hard time making friends. So it's a nice way to bring it into a place that is consistent, because we have them weekly, and they usually last probably about 3 to 4 months, well, probably 3 months more that weekly, and then we switch them up again because we have so many kids that we'd like to get into lunch group. They really enjoy it. We tend to play a game too to keep it fun, and we typically have a game with a purpose so that we can teach a skill. And I use a lot of Michelle Garcia winner in my lunch groups. So I have all the Superflex characters, if you know, on my wall, and we talk about each of them. And then if somebody's being, like one of those characters, we call them out a little bit, or just try to teach the skills that Superflex would be thinking about. The school psychologists do have lunch groups as well, and they would normally do the kids that have lunch group on their IEPs, and I would do more, the school adjustment counselors would do more of the general ed kids for lunch group. Then we have something called Loved Ones Raising Loved Ones, which is a family member raising another family member's child. So it would be a grandmother maybe raising a son or daughter's child, or maybe an aunt or an uncle raising a brother or sister's child. And there's a lot of different issues that come out of that type of family situation. So once a month, Linda Nathan and Nina Riley have a group that supports that family structure right here in Jenkins at 6:30 the last Monday of the month till 7:30, and they have pizza at first as caregivers and child, and then they break off with Nina and Linda as separate groups. And I'm looking to start one for divorced families or single parent families. So I think that's a big need in our community, and think that it would be really nice to have a support group for families. So we've advertised it through the newsletter, as well as a counseling newsletter too, but I only have 4, well, I had 3 and now I have a 4th, so I think we're going to basically start one. But it's hard to, once you have a group established, to then bring new people into the group, so I wanted to get a little bit more people involved.
Are you able to put that on Peachtree?
I'm not sure if we put it, but we can.
Just another avenue.
Yeah, so if you know of anybody, they can contact me. I'm at Wampatuck or Cushing. And then we also have the Guiding Good Choices program, which was through, and that's really geared to up until 8th grade. And that's funded by Situate Facts, and it really was it is a drug prevention program. It's research-based family drug prevention program that is based in, and we all get trained on that, the counselors. So we do the training, the school does the training for parents, and it's free. It just is a book that you have to pay for that comes with the course. And it's really developing healthy beliefs and clear standards for your family. It's all centered around having a family meeting. And it starts, the younger you can start with your children, the better, and more about setting out what your expectations are and beliefs are. Like, something as simple as cleaning up after toys. Expected you have to clean up. You play, you clean up after toys. And then you get into, that you have to do your dishes. And then you're getting into, you cannot play that video game, and then you're talking about what time is their curfew. And then, no, we don't want you to smoke. And all kind of education around that in that family meeting, but making family meetings fun too, so bonding happens with your children. So then they feel more comfortable talking to you and being more open about things that they have concerns about. And they talk, which I think is really a great part of that program, is they teach refusal skills to the children. They come one evening, and a lot of kids are afraid to say no to their friends, so they start making up stories, but because they want to keep their friends, so we teach them skills on how to say no but still keep your friends, okay? And parents sometimes get concerned, well, they're going to keep those friends, but if they get really, really bad, they're going to open up and communicate with you about that, and then talk to you about ways of maybe not maintaining that friendship for a while, or maybe indicating to you that other friend is having an issue that you could talk to their parents about. So we go over a lot of those different things. They talk about anger management, because when we're talking about those kind of sensitive issues with our kids, sometimes our anger and our emotions come up. So it's really, they teach us really good skills on how to manage the anger through those kind of conversations. So I think that's the 3 main points about that program that we teach.
Are you all aware of the Situate Facts Coalition and what they support, how they support Situate? Okay, good. I just want to make sure.
And then they're going to talk about PBIS, right?
Should I be flippant? Because
Oh, yeah, I'm
So
sorry. I went ahead.
in our slides.
I went
Yeah.
ahead.
Still doing the SIBS group? She was doing it.
Linda, I'm not sure if she's still doing the SIBS group. You know what happens? You have to have the lunches at the right time, and the kids with the same issues at the same time.
I found very helpful.
Oh, okay, great, yeah. So we want to create more groups if we can. It's a matter of trying to figure out the timing of the children and getting them out of class if it's not at lunch. So she probably, yeah.
Well, she's a Gates.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad she found it.
Yeah, so those are some of the programs that we have through the counseling program. through the
And I did
counseling
want to add to the
department.
Kids of Promise that Jen mentioned that's being done at the high school. We're starting it this year at Gates. So that's the support group for students who have a close family member or a friend with a substance abuse issue.
Okay. So in special education, as I said earlier, the school psychologists are a service for students who receive that through their IEP. If through the assessments and through the needs of the student, they require special education counseling, they receive that through the school psychologist. But do we want to share the SST and DCAP process? Do you want me to go through that a little bit?
Yeah, you might want to.
Okay, I'll start that off.
Yeah.
So SST is Student Support Team. It used to be called IST, which was Instructional Student Support Team. And the district, again, has revamped a lot of that. Our DCAP is called a District Curriculum Accommodation Plan. And each school can develop a CAP for a student. So you can have a school, a school accommodation plan. What happens is, we're kind of going a little bit backwards, but through response to intervention, there are 3 levels or 3 tiers of supports that students can receive, both academically, behaviorally, and social emotionally, all 3, not both. And the SST team is led by the school psychologist of that building. It is still a general education process, and it is a discussion where the student has worked through the 3 tiers, and at some point, the data is still showing that for whatever the area of concern is, they're not making the effective progress that we want them to make. So SST is the tippy top of that 3rd tier, where some special educators, the school psychologists, school adjustment counselors, reading specialists, math specialists, all people that could possibly be involved, it's like the brain trust of everything, come together and try to develop what's called the DCAP. They put together with the classroom teacher specialized accommodations that that student might need that are above and beyond what a typical student receives, but they don't need to go through the testing. They don't need to have a disability. They don't need to have a 504 plan or an IEP plan. These are our district accommodations. And we try to look at that over a certain period of time to determine if those have helped that student become more successful. Sometimes it might mean counseling. So that's that 0.1% that I said, where they might still see the psychologist, but that's a part of the tier 3 top line. And it's a short period of time. It's not an extended period of time. And so there are many different things that can be in the role of the DCAP. And we continue to collect data on that. Again, the SST primarily, their role has been behavior and emotional, but they do also talk about and structure some accommodations for academics.
Can we jump in?
Yes,
So
please.
Just a couple examples of something that a plan that we might try out and create for a student in the support team. In the middle school, executive functioning is all the rage, and they're all trying to figure out how to organize themselves and manage themselves. So a couple of things we might put in place. We find out, we do a student questionnaire, and we find out that, they haven't been using their agenda. But they're going to need some help doing that independently. I mean, they come up from the elementary and they've had so much support in that, and the teacher always reminds them every day to write in that agenda every class. And the teachers will say that at Gates, but it's more like you should be able to do that by yourself then. But a student might need, instead of going through the special education process, they need the teacher to sign off that they've completed that agenda. So every class, they have to go up and show the teacher, and then the parent knows to check that when they get home. And you didn't get science assigned today, what happened in science? Or they might email the science teacher and find out. So that's just one example of something that they might do.
And Angela, you can talk about an elementary model of what happens because you run SST there.
Absolutely. We definitely meet a lot for reading and math and academic concerns, but also social emotional, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. So for instance, at the elementary level, you guys probably hear a lot about the DIBBLES, which is a progress monitoring tool we use at the elementary level. So what we would do is we'd set specific and measurable goals to see, with all of these supports in place and these accommodations through good teaching practices and just going above and beyond for a student, if they make progress with all these supports in place. And then we reconvene the team to see how did this student do, and we look at the data and we analyze the data as a team to determine, okay, you know, a lot of the times that's what the student needed. They needed a tier 3 most intensive support in reading, and when we provided that support for the student, they thrived. So we sort of figured out what they needed, and so that's why we draft that DCAP to say, moving forward, they should always be in tier 3 unless they make even more sufficient progress, and then we can start pulling away those supports. But it's just, it helps because it moves from grade level to grade level, it helps the next year's teacher know what accommodations the student needs to be successful. And so it's a really good starting point, and it's, you know, it's fluid from year to year as well.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to know that there are measurable goals on a DCAP that the team develops, that they're analyzing and looking at through the data, and that they're short-term, and that in all tier interventions, students should be, both ways, the door goes both ways. Students can be in a tier 1 for math, and maybe tier 3 for writing, and maybe social emotional, they're in a tier 2 supports. So students can be in all tiers. And students who have IEP services access the general ed tiers as well. It's not exclusive. So all of those supports can overlap at times.
The parents don't sign off on DCAPs.
Parents do not sign off on DCAPs.
Tell them again.
Correct. But when a student is being brought to SST as a request for support, the classroom teacher is the one responsible, according to the SST plans, to notify the parent and let them know. But if we're at that point, we've already been through tiers 1, 2, and maybe some levels of 3, so parents have hopefully always been involved in that whole communication. When a DCAP is developed, that teacher again is responsible for going over that with the parent to understand what it is that they're targeting and where they're going with their child and what supports are new that are going to be in place. So there should be that level of communication going on through all of the response to intervention tiers and at the SST level as well. Okay. Any questions so far? Because we've talked about a lot of different things. Okay. So this year, we'll talk about programs, but supports. But this year was our first year of a social emotional program through IEP services at the Gates Intermediate School, and the second year at the high school. And they're staffed. I don't even know if it's on another slide. It is. Yeah. So it is a full inclusion program, and I have Cassandra talk more about it because she is directly involved with the Gates program. But it's staffed with one special educator, one school psychologist, and one paraprofessional to support the group of students both in the general ed classroom and in the social emotional classroom. That classroom is primarily a full inclusion program. However, as with all IEP services are individualized to the student's needs. So it can be even a partial inclusion or more restrictive if it needs to be, with the flexibility of moving toward more independence. Correct? Correct. Staffing.
And a lot of that might
Go ahead.
depend on, different students might need different flexibility
Right.
depending on the year. They might not. Like, our goal is always to get them in all 4 academic classes, core academic classes, and specials. But something cool about this program is that if we have a student who loves art, can't live without art, but they have some special education services that they're reading or that they're receiving in their academic strategies class takes up that block, and they might have limited specials and are not getting access to all of them, we can really try and handpick and tailor their specials or allow them more choices than we would for a general ed student. So that's something that's important. And then the flexibility too, I mean, we have just after break coming back, we know it can be really tough for different kids at different times, so we might need to build up a reentry, one class a day or 2 classes a day, or let's just start with specials and we'll see how that goes, and allowing that classroom to be that safe space for them, that they're still working on academics, but the main focus is really on relationship building, and making them feel connected in a part of the school, in the community. Our first priority is always safety. We want to make sure that all of those kids can be safe with themselves and with other people. Because we do have not only, I mean, social concerns, there are emotional concerns and behavior concerns. And we know they all interplay. But safety is really the top priority. We want to make sure everybody's safe first, and then thinking about their social and emotional functioning. The really kind of cool thing about this program too is that it's a lot of kids, I mean, they might have their individual learning profile, but most of them are solidly functioning. They might have average to above average IQ, but they really need, something's getting in the way of connecting with peers, connecting with teachers, connecting with adults in their life, and that's getting in the way of them accessing the curriculum. I'm so melting down because this fight that I got in with my sister this morning that I can't focus on science right now. So we need to work through those social and emotional things before they can get to the academic. So we really try and buffer those kids and help them get through that. And it's also, I mean, developmentally, we're teaching different things at different times. So we're really looking at advocacy, teaching them self-advocacy. How do I speak up for myself? How do I say when I need a break? How do I even know when I need a break? Who do I go to and who do I seek out to get the support that I need? And then emotional coping is something that we're always teaching. How do I deal and how do I sit with this uncomfortable feeling, which really goes along with our training that we did today, the mindfulness training, and then problem solving. So I don't like what the teacher said to me this afternoon. How am I going to problem solve? Who am I going to advocate for? How do I get in a good group when I have to do this group project? So we're really trying to coach kids through to make good choices and help manage their emotions throughout the school day so that they can learn the most that they can learn and show what they really know, because there's usually a lot more in there that we need to be able to tap into that.
And then I'll just speak to our RTI, Response to Intervention Framework at the elementary level. So this is something that is available to all students. This is our general education framework. So if you take a look at Tier 1, that is the green area. So that's the area that is available to all students. So at the elementary level, the school psychologists run what's called PBIS, Positive Behavioral Intervention and Supports. So here at Jenkins, that's your Super Sharks. If you've ever heard your child say they earned a Super Shark for good behavior, that's what they're referring to. So it's almost like a caught being good card. So it's just to motivate students behaviorally. And at the other buildings, they're called various things, the Hatherley Hornets. So you might have heard of that if you're from the Hatherley district. So each elementary school has a different
A different approach to the same program.
Right.
It's tailored for their building.
Exactly.
Cushing
So,
Cool Cats.
so
Right.
the cool
Yeah,
cats.
Cool
at
Cats
Cushing.
at Cushing
Yeah.
and Wampatuck
Yeah.
R&R.
Yeah.
So that's available to all students. And then you look at Tier 2. So Tier 2 is the next tiered support, and that is available to all students. However, not all students participate in these types of activities. So for example, a Tier 2 support would be a lunch group. So this is an area that not all students in the building get, because not every student requires a lunch group to be a successful student, but a smaller population does. Also in the classroom, that looks like your stop and go stoplight. So if you've heard your child say, I was in the green today, and that's their teacher's way of showing that they had a successful day. So that's a Tier 2 support. And then Tier 3 is the most intensive support. So that's the most needy support for behavior. And at Jenkins, we have a program called JAWS, and it stands for Jenkins Awesome Working Students. And what it is it's a check-in, check-out program for students who may present with some behavioral challenges, some social emotional challenges, even attentional concerns. And they'll check in with our guidance counselor in the morning, and they talk about how they can make the day successful. And each student has specific goals that's tailored to them. So it may be having expected behaviors in the classroom. And then they talk about how can we have expected behaviors. Give me some examples of what an expected behavior is. And they have this chart that follows them throughout the day, and they're rated based on their behavior. And then at the end of the day, they check out with the guidance counselor, and they talk about their day and talk about what successes they had, or talk about difficulties and how they can make it a successful day for the following day. So that's what we offer here at Jenkins, because we found we had a need here. Some other supports include individual counseling. That's a very intensive need, so a very small population. Individual behavior plans, consultation with teachers, things like that. So that's all within our Gen Ed alternatives, I guess.
Can you talk a little bit about the schools that you're in, what similar Tier 3 interventions they might have?
We do, at Cushing, for example, we have cool cats that the kids will earn for doing good behaviors in the classroom, just like here. And then we have a cool cat rally where we pick a theme, and Wampatuck does the same thing. Typically, they get R&R tickets, and Deb picks a theme as well, the school psychologist there. And both Cushing and Wampatuck, they film the kids trying to set examples of the theme, like maybe friendship is one of them, what's it like to be a friend, so they'll all talk about that on a videotape that they do, and then we show it during a rally at Cushing, or we show it during lunch at Wampatuck. And then we pick names. So when you get a Cushing Cool Cat, it goes into a fishbowl. When you get an R&R ticket, it goes into a sand bucket at Wampatuck. And then we pick names, and the kids come up, and then they do some sort of art activity. That's what they earn from winning at one of those rallies. And we typically would hope to bring that message, say Friendship for the Month, that the general ed teachers would bring that throughout their curriculum for that month as well. And we have posters throughout the building of that theme too. And then for targeted approaches, like if we hear like an incident that we hear that something's happening on the bus, that people are bullying, or we hear that somebody went online and looked and showed something inappropriate, we would go into a classroom and we will talk specifically, using either open circle model or whatever model that they have in that classroom, like a morning meeting, to discuss a specific topic that needs to be addressed, that we feel is getting out of hand, that we need to do more of a general kind of, this is what we hear is going on, we don't use specific names. We'll do that even for kids that feel bullied too, without labeling, the kid that's pointing out particular kids' names. Just do it in a more general sense, so that we get in doing more targeted kind of psychoeducational approach to an issue in the classroom. We've done it even for full grades when things get really out of hand. We even do that when there's a parent who has cancer, or a death of a parent. So because we don't want the rumors to start spreading, and yet, so we'll send home typically a letter to parents to tell them we're going to be telling the kids this, and that they may want to talk to them that evening that we have done this, or if we're going to do it the next day, that you can opt your child out of it if you think it's going to be too much for them. So that's kind of examples of targeted. The students know that myself and the school psychologist in each of our buildings, I'm sure they know you, and the school psychologist in each of the buildings. So if they feel like something's happening or they're having a friendship issue, they know they can ask their teacher or come up to us and ask for time with us, and we'll always try to do a lot. We typically try to do some mediation too. Mm-hmm. In the younger grades, it can be a little bit hard sometimes because they feel like they're in trouble, but we kind of work through that because they're not in trouble. We're trying to teach them problem-solving skills. So that mediation, I feel, is more of a targeted problem skill development that we try to do as counselors. And then in the intensive piece, everything that Cassandra talked about in the social emotional programming, we really try to do with our individual kids. We're trying to teach them how to advocate for themselves, how to self-advocate, how to build those skills to self-regulate in the classroom when what's upsetting them, how to tell somebody and trust a trusted adult, with their feelings. Really trying to build that relationship in a solid way in the elementary, so it builds throughout the rest of their career, that they can go to somebody, of course their parents, but also somebody else that they can find as an advocate for them when they need it in the building.
At Hatherley, I know about their PBIS, I think they pick a theme item each month, and they have different grade levels or different teams that present a PBIS assembly. So I remember last year I was invited to one. Our ILC program did a whole video and presentation on differences, and it was wonderful to see. And so that each group like that or a grade level does a presentation at Hatherley for their PBIS on different themes like that, friendship, things like that.
And something that was new to Jenkins this year, we also have assemblies, but they're not as frequent as some of the other elementary schools just because of the size of the building and getting all the kids together at once. So this year I filmed a video of teachers behaving badly and doing the unexpected behaviors around the building, and went into each classroom and showed the video, and we discussed what the unexpected behaviors were and had you seen these, and the kids were saying, of course, so we see kids doing that all the time. And so it was a really good teaching moment. And now what I will be doing is filming the students and filming their expected behavior. So what it should look like in the hallways and what it should look like at recess. But it was a really fun time, collaborative time, where all the teachers, we had a teacher running up a slide, and I filmed that, and it was just a lot of fun. So now the students will be able to show what it should really look like here at Jenkins, and being able to go into the classrooms has been really wonderful this year.
And I think for more targeted, as we get more guidance curriculum that we can use too, that we're trying to develop for the district. I mean, we do have Open Circle and Second Step. As we have more time as adjustment counselors, because our jobs are shifting a little bit more, we will be doing more targeted guidance lessons. So like right now, if there's a child doing unexpected behaviors, we'll go in and do one of Michelle Garcia Winter's lessons. Or if we have a kid that's speaking really loud in class, we'll go in and use that strategy. So we do go in and do specific lessons too for certain issues in classrooms.
Questions and answers? It's a lot of information, and the handouts have even more detail than what we were able to speak to, but absolutely. Questions?
I asked along the way.
For some of our programs, I know at the high school, our vocational life skills program, the school psychologist, Steve Howley, does go in there, and actually the other school psychologist intern also go in and work with the groups as a whole group. So Jones Trezero's interns will go in and do some work with the whole group in general and talk about many different factors. And I know Steve in the years past has run a men's group, and teachers have run a women's group, and so now this year they're finding the cohort really needs groups together and the conversations that they need to have. So there's a lot of social emotional supports in many different ways that are either program specific or district specific. Anything else?
I just want to make sure I understand. So, like Jen?
Yep.
So my son's at the high school. So your role is, how is it different than the psychologist, or is it strictly behavioral?
So no. So he probably has a or he does have a school counselor, guidance counselor, whoever, one of the 5 assigned to him. And I am just kind of another layer of support. So if a student had something either crisis-related, kind of in the moment, or trouble with a teacher, or, and sometimes it may start that their guidance counselor isn't available and they're looking for somebody else, or sometimes it's, I want the confidentiality piece, or I'm concerned about a friend, or whatever it may be. So I'm just kind of another layer of support with both the community resources and the mental health background. I mean, the counseling background outside of here, and which is a little bit different, I think, than, obviously than school counselors and that. So that's kind of what we have to offer. But then the school psychologist piece, they generally work with a special ed population. So I work with the general ed population, but again, there's overlap all the time where we're working together, between school counseling, school psych, and adjustment counselors.
Get that divorce group up and running, I would be interested.
Okay, great. Do you want to give me or I can give you my email? Okay, all right. I'll get you.
I think Paulette and I will be running it together.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Angela.
That's okay.
Jeez, I've even taking credit. That is horrible. I am so sorry. That's
all good. She was speaking with you, and you were responding.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'd love to see a sibling support. I'd love to see a sibling support. It was very helpful at the elementary level. I remember my daughter saying, I didn't know Chloe had a brother, with Down syndrome. I had no idea. And that helped her along the way. And now Gates is a huge population. It's a great opportunity to get these kids together. Go, oh wait, you too? And we were at a swim meet, and a friend went up to Emma and said, I think my brother has what your brother has. So come out of the closet, if you will. So it's an idea.
There's incredible empower.
Yeah,
I mean, groups are incredibly powerful. I think to be with other people who get it, is way more powerful than us trying to explain that to them.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that it was successful in both Jenkins and in Hopkins.
Okay.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Share the information with all of you.